I just think about elders, I think about young people, I think about people who may not be empowered to use their voice in systems that are unjust to them, and I worry about how they are managing throughout all of this.
Tonight, the healthcare system in British Columbia is under fire. Allegations of health practitioners playing a dangerous game with the lives of Indigenous patients.
I've been looking forward to graduating with all my friends and being able to go dress shopping and everything with my mom.
And celebrating milestones during a global pandemic. How grads are finding a way to commemorate their achievements. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Chantal Moore was shot and killed by police in New Brunswick on June 4th. Now her family and community are looking for answers and demanding changes to policing across the country. Here's Jamie Pashagumskum.
In a statement released Saturday, elected and hereditary leaders of the Cleokiat First Nation are asking why lethal force was used when Edmundston Police responded to what the Moore family has described as a request for a wellness check on the 26-year-old mother, and they have a list of demands, first of which is that the officer that shot Moore be charged with murder. The statement goes on to say, "It has been reported to the family that attempts at de-escalation were not made, and non-lethal force was not attempted, and Chantal was shot 5 times at close range. We cannot help but believe the officer's intent was to end Chantal's life." A murder charge is not likely imminent, as the incident is now under investigation by Quebec's investigator, the Bureau des Enquêtes Indépendantes. However, it's been reported that since its inception in 2016, Quebec's investigator has only once charged an officer with a crime. Cleokiat leaders are also demanding body cameras for all police officers and mental health checks every 5 years. The statement says, "We as First Nations know firsthand the devastating impacts of trauma and PTSD and the resulting secondary lateral violence following centuries of mistreatment by police, residential schools, and other racist institutions. We ask you and all our Canadian police to be accountable, to face your trauma and address your healing, to prevent passing it on to our families, like the families of Chantal and George Floyd, and in the countless videos we've seen these past few weeks." The leaders suggest that any officer found unfit for duty be put on paid disability leave and not allowed to return to duty until found mentally fit. They're also asking for an inquiry into Chantal's killing and a say into who leads the investigation. Once complete, they want the findings available to the public. Jamie Pashagumskum, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Thanks, Jamie. Many Indigenous people from across the Northwest Territories have to travel from their home community to deal with legal matters. And for those on bail, the COVID-19 pandemic has left some stranded and unsure when they can go home. Our reporter Charlotte Mort-Jacobs looks into several issues around bail in the North.
Will Steen is stuck in Yellowknife, awaiting trial in his hometown, the dry community of Tuktaktuk, Northwest Territories. He faces 6 charges from a night of drinking back home, breach of probation and assault, then assault and mischief when arrested and detained by RCMP.
Well, I had a criminal record since I was about 19 years old. Most of my charges after I got charged were careless storage of a firearm and careless use when I was young.
Steen was flown from Tuk to Yellowknife in August of 2019. He spent a week in jail and was released on his own recognizance in Yellowknife under the condition he'll avoid Tuk until court matters are settled. But he's unsure how he will even get up to Tuk for the trial there, and it's unclear when Circuit Court will be up and running again and when it will be operating at pre-COVID-19 capacity.
I was supposed to have an appearance date for August 12th in Tuktaktuk, but they wouldn't able to let me go home because these charges are still standing.
Steen's current charges came less than 2 months after he had been released from the North Slave Correctional Center in Yellowknife, having served 1 year for similar offenses. But his experience within the justice system mirrors that of many Indigenous people across Turtle Island. According to the Correctional Investigator of Canada, Indigenous people make up over 30% of inmates. Currently, there's 106 adult inmates in the NWT's 3 correctional facilities. Of these, 86% identify as Indigenous. Defense lawyer Peter Hart moved his practice to the north 15 years ago, but he still talks about the shock he felt representing clients with 6-page criminal records.
I think I can say that the vast majority of offenses on offender criminal records are breaches of one form or another of court order.
Steen turned down free accommodations at the Salvation Army in an effort to not breach bail by drinking, and he works construction to help pay for his family's home in Tuck and a tiny room in Yellowknife.
My hair is even falling out, like dealing with stress and anxiety and like depression, like being in a quiet place for days and weeks, just come home after work and no way to spend time with family.
Hart sees how Indigenous people from remote communities get into trouble when awaiting trial in Yellowknife.
Say Tuck, for example, you're released here, you've got nothing to do. There are maybe people on the street who you know. In fact, it's likely you're going to know people on the street, and so you end up chumming around with them, but that really isn't a very engaging activity. And so it ends up being a situation where in Tuck you could be hunting or fishing or finding wood or whatever to help your family, whereas here those opportunities to participate in your community are pretty limited.
There's also been confusion around a court travel policy which was updated in January, which deals with what flights courts will pay for when accused are released from remand.
In bail court before a justice of the peace, you seek release on condition that the client reside elsewhere other than in the community where the offenses are alleged to have taken place. The challenge that arose recently in January of this year was that the court was only prepared to fly people back to the community that they'd been arrested in. So if you managed to secure release for your client in Yellowknife, the court would not return him to the community that he had been arrested in.
APTN News asked the Territorial Justice Department about the policy change. They replied that no staff were available to clarify. We were also told that the Justice Department doesn't keep records of how many people from remote communities are released in the capital city. Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
To British Columbia, healthcare practitioners are under fire for allegedly playing a game similar to The Price is Right, where they would guess the blood alcohol levels of some Indigenous patients. As APTN's Tina House reports, more people are coming forward with their own stories about mistreatment in the healthcare system.
It's been 2 years since Marcia Guno's younger brother Preston passed away at the age of 49.
2 years ago, Preston was diagnosed with a very severe and aggressive form of cancer. And Preston lived in Prince George. And in the early parts of his illness, he went to the Prince George Hospital to seek treatment in emergency.
And that's where Marcia says her brother faced systemic racism in the healthcare system. Marcia says her brother went to that hospital between 3 to 5 times to try and find out why he was in so much pain, but was told to go home each time and that nothing was wrong.
He let me know that on one of those visits that one of the questions that was asked of him was could his injury or his illness be part of possibly a sexually transmitted disease. At the time, Preston had aggressive form of cancer, and we later found out that during that time he had fractures in his spine and his hips, and it was incredible that he was still mobile and the warrior that he was, you know, seeking treatment and walking around and trying to get help.
By the time he was properly diagnosed, it was too late. Ironically, Preston Guno was the provincial director of Indigenous cancer care with the Canadian Cancer Society at the time of his death. And according to many others, this story of systemic racism is just the tip of the iceberg.
What we notice is that Indigenous people are often asked, the first thing that they're asked is, how much have you had to drink today?
BC Health Minister Adrian Dix says he learned of an alleged Price is Right game where doctors and nurses guess the blood alcohol level of Indigenous patients.
If confirmed, the conduct is beyond unacceptable.
The Métis Nation of BC is one of the organizations that brought this to the minister's attention.
This day and age, that we're still dealing with this type of racism to our Indigenous people, we always knew it was there. But to this extent is shocking.
The BC government has appointed former judge Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond to lead an independent investigation.
Clearly, if there's any workplace in British Columbia where people are playing games at the expense of the health or safety of Indigenous people, one can only expect someone in those roles to face severe consequences.
Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Two northern BC First Nations say a dam has devastated their territory. We'll have that story for you coming up after the break. First, a look at tomorrow's weather for the east and central parts of the country. Starting off on the east coast, we've got 26 in sunshine for Charlottetown, 25 with some cloud in Halifax. Nechako, 25 and sunny skies. La Grande River, 20 when mostly sunny. Gaspé, 24 with some rain. Quebec City, sunshine and 25. Windsor, 30 degrees and sunny skies, 25 in Peterborough. So look out, some rain and 24. Kapuskasing, sunny and 25. 26 for Thompson with a mix of sun and clouds. 28 in God's Lake, mostly sunny. Lots of sunshine for Brandon and Dauphin. 28s there. 28 and some cloud in Winnipeg. 29 and sunshine for Regina. 30 and sunny in Estevan. Buffalo Narrows, 23 degrees and sunny skies. 25 up in Stony Rapids and some rain. Welcome back. Two northern BC First Nations say a Rio Tinto dam has devastated their communities. And recently, the Sayakas and Stalaten First Nations wrapped up their testimony in the Supreme Court, showing the damage that's been done. APTN's Lee Wilson reports.
Pile of rock signifies the beginning of the destruction of our environment.
Stalaten Chief Archie Patrick stands on top of the Kenny Dam. The dam, built by Rio Tinto, is the heart of a 200-day BC Supreme Court case brought by his nation and the neighboring Sayakas against Rio Tinto, the BC, and federal governments. Testimony started in October of last year, but was delayed due to COVID-19. The dam diverts nearly 70% of the water from the Nechako River. The nations say construction and operation has had a devastating impact on their way of life, and their Aboriginal rights and title have never been addressed.
Told the judge in our opening remarks our concern about the environment, our concern about the fish, our concern about the flow of the river and making sure that there's enough flow and water to look after our salmon.
No, nobody talked to us. But they did.
The Kenny Dam was built by aluminum producer Alcan in 1952. According to Rio Tinto, who purchased Alcan, the $500 million project was the largest public and private project in Canada at the time. Water would be diverted from the Nechako River to a Camano power station to produce electricity for aluminum smelter in Kitimat. Excess power would be sold back to the BC government at a discounted rate. Neither the government or Alcan consulted with the local First Nations.
In some respects, this represents the beginning of the destruction of our territory and really our way of life. Prior to that, I was 8 years old when this was, or 6, I think, when it was being discussed, and I remember listening to the elders of the time, who would have been born in the 1800s, discussing this and saying that it's an impossibility. They can't destroy the land of that mass.
When the negotiations took place for the dam to be built, the Indian Act had amendments from 1927 to 1951 making it illegal for Indigenous people in Canada to hire a lawyer or bring land claims without the government's consent. Current Sayakas First Nations Chief Priscilla Mueller says consent has never been given from their nation.
Back in the day, we couldn't even hire legal counsel right? So, and now here we are basically had to force them to come to the table to, right? So now we're in court.
Even when Chilcotin was dropped in 2014, they didn't seek our consent. Said to industry and government to obtain the consent of First Nations. They didn't even make effort to do that then. So we're at court now.
Rio Tinto released the following statement this June. Rio Tinto prefers to work in partnership with First Nations groups to build partnerships that are mutually beneficial. Rio Tinto has, on a number of occasions, sought to find ways to resolve this issue without proceeding to court hearings. The two nations say they don't have much of a relationship with the company. They say their way of life has been affected due to the low flow, which they shared in their testimony. The impacts of the dam can be seen from a large watershed on one side and a near dry canyon running 8 kilometers on the other.
Known as Dakel people, those that travel by water. So our water, the rivers and the lakes are a transportation route as well as a food source for our people.
I remember being a little girl where we used to clean like 200 salmon a day. And now, which makes me really sad, is now we have to buy our salmon. And our people come to the band office and they line up to pick up maybe 2 salmon. And that, I just think we're not a third world country.
Another neighboring nation that has been affected by the Kenny Dam, warrant report, are the Cheslata Carrier Nation.
Enhanced flow ever since the Kamano 1 project. This is about 10 times the natural flow of the Cheslata River.
The unnatural flow has caused massive flooding along the runoffs of the Nechako Lake, leading to the forced relocation of the Cheslata Carrier Nation shortly after the dam's construction.
The relocation happened because of the annual flooding that went on. So to build the dams, they flooded a vast amount of our area. And during that flooding period, to create the reservoirs for the dam, people were evicted out of the territory.
Earlier last year, Cheslata Carrier Nation signed a restitution agreement with the BC government. They came to show support to their neighboring nations. The next stage of the BC Supreme Court case will be Rio Tinto presenting their case. The Sycas and Stellatan both say their goal is to have the watershed be restored.
We don't know if it'll be restored 100%, but we're hoping that it's going to be restored. Most of it will be restored, and that we'll be able to. It's not acting like a river. The Nechako is not acting like a river anymore, and we're just hoping that it can come back to what it once was.
The court case still has a long way to go, but the nations believe it's important to shed light on this dark moment in Canadian history. They are calling for support and prayers from those that hear their story.
What does reconciliation mean when we have this dam built here that is diverting 70% of a great Nechako River? And how can Canadians come out and support, when we are taking action, in the streets or in the court systems? We do need that support. We do need those prayers.
Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Vanderhoof.
It's grad season, and we've got some very special graduates celebrating despite the pandemic. That's after the break. And here's the rest of tomorrow's weather, this time for the west and the north. Off to northern Alberta, we got 24s for Fort Chip and Fort McMurray and sunny skies. 21 in Red Deer with some rain, 31 and sunny in Medicine Hat. Campbell River, 22 with some rain, 26 and cloud for Kamloops. Prince Rupert, 13 and rain. Fort Nelson, a mix of sun and cloud, and 22. Dawson City and Mayo, some rain and 19 degrees. Whitehorse, mix of sun and cloud, and 17. Norman Wells we'll see some rain, 19 degrees. Same with Wauhee. Colville Lake, 14 and cloudy skies. Paulatuck, you can get some snow and 4 degrees. Chesterfield, 9 and rain. Arviat, 5 and rain. Showers for Tallyoak at 18 degrees. Arctic Bay, mix of sun and cloud, at 8. Pangerton, 6 with some rain. Welcome back. Grad season is wrapping up and many graduates did not get the send-off and celebration that usually comes with grad, but it didn't stop them from enjoying the day anyway, even if it didn't happen in the usual way. Beverly Andrews shows us how some celebrated.
Graduation usually comes with big parties and ceremonies, but not this year. The global pandemic canceled classes weeks early, and social distancing guidelines limit large group gatherings. But that didn't stop grads of all ages from getting their recognition.
Hi, my name is Kalina. I'm from Puckawagan, Manitoba, and I'm graduating to grade 1.
6-year-old Kalina Green School allowed the kindergarten grads to come and pick up their diploma, but parents had to stay at a distance. In Vancouver, instead of a big gala, grade 12 grad Skyla Charlie Boy's class was invited individually to pick up their diploma at the school. Parents had to wait outside.
I've been looking forward to graduating with all my friends and being able to go dress shopping and everything with my mom. And I was really looking forward to having a prom and a graduation ceremony, as long with a Aboriginal grad ceremony.
COVID-19 took Charlie Boy's last few months of classes and the big grad parties, but she says she's not done with grad yet.
Me and my mom were thinking about throwing our own grad party, and we're gonna rent out a boat and have all my friends and family to dress up nice and everything. And just
Grad never comes too late. 68-year-old Lorna Thomas of Nechako First Nation had to leave school when she was only 14 years old. She earned her high school diploma this year.
I never really had the chance to finish school, so I wanted to get it done.
Although she didn't get the big ceremony, the Nechako First Nation arranged grad photos in lieu of the usual community celebration, and Thomas still got to celebrate her diploma in her own way.
My son, he had a barbecue for me and a few friends over. Then we went voting.
No matter how schools and grads celebrated this year, nothing can diminish their achievements.
I just want to say that I am proud of each and one of you. I know that this has probably affected a lot of you as well. And you know, the most important thing is that we finally made it and that we're all graduating still together.
Beverly Andrews, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Great story, and congratulations to all you grads out there. The Radio and Television Digital News Association has recognized an icon in broadcasting with its highest honor, a Lifetime Achievement Award. Emma Saganash is an award-winning Cree journalist from Quebec. She retired from CBC North's Cree unit in Montreal in 2018. Her career in radio, television, and management lasted over 4 decades. Saganash is a residential school survivor and a mentor for aspiring journalists. She says Indigenous voices can help change the mainstream news narrative.
There are many negative stories out there about Aboriginal people or Indigenous people, and I find that it's important for us to tell our story, the stories of people of the land, the good that's in the communities as well.
Well-deserved honor for Ms. Saganash. Well, that is your news for tonight. Catch up on anything that you've missed on our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Have a great day, and I'll see you back here tomorrow.